Welcome to Pressplay, Zubin.
Hi, Vineet, and thank you for having me here on Pressplay.
Awesome. Extremely exciting to have fellow St. Marian and good friend Zubin Jimmy Dubash as part of our sixth podcast. Zubin is COO at Shemaroo's digital business and has been a veteran of the Indian digital media and OTT businesses over the years. He has produced stellar results for the companies he has worked at and now finds himself building ShemarooMe, one of India's fastest growing OTT platforms. I will let Zubin introduce himself to the audience. So Zubin, over to you.
Hey, thanks, Vineet. So, just a small little thing about myself is that I have been in the digital space and built digital businesses right since the last about 2 decades. I started my career way back in the late 90s with Microsoft solution provider selling, software training for a lot of corporates, and then moved into two big telecom stints. One was Vodafone, which is today Vodafone, and did a lot of product and marketing functions out there, roles out there. Then moved into Tata Docomo, which was, of course, one of those game changers at its time, and led two large businesses there. One was, of course, the entire non-voice business, which was about $120 million business. And then, of course, moved into the new innovative Docomo services that could be brought into India and seeing what businesses can be built from that. So there were two distinct roles there for about overall 6 years. After which I kind of startup bug bit me, and I had to do something on my own and joined hands with a couple of friends and built India's first offline app store. This was about in 2011 when the market was bursting with smartphones. People were buying them only for show, but they didn't know what to do with them and didn't know how to even install WhatsApp on them. So we thought that there's this entire opportunity to educate people with the use of smartphones. And we actually built a business in the offline retail space of creating an app store in the offline world. So we had a chain of about 15,000 smartphone stores who would actually sideload apps officially on customers' devices and actually take money over the counter. And this, of course, sped into a 5 year stint. Did a great job out there and built it up to great valuation. Unfortunately, of course, demonetization hit us badly because it was retail and a lot of cash transactions. So we had to kind of pivot, by which time, of course, I bounced back into the digital world and I joined Shemaroo. At Shemaroo, of course, I look at the entire digital piece, which is a bunch of things that I do apart from setting up the OTT, which was set up and launched in 2019. I also look after the YouTube business and other digital destinations like Facebook and the likes. So that's been my journey so far, and it's an exciting journey. I love what I do, and that's my principles of life. That enjoy what you do, and then you'll excel at what you do always.
Awesome. Awesome. That's quite the journey, Zubin. That's brilliant. So that leads me to my next question, and more relevant to what you're currently doing and experiencing as the Indian online video space evolves and becomes even bigger. So, what are your thoughts on the current Indian OTT space? So many platforms emerging, vying for eyeballs. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, if I had to take a step back, Vineet, the way I'd look at it is the OTT industry has evolved over the last 5 years, and I still feel that 5 years is still in infancy. It's still in its infancy stage. But even then, there's been significant amount of change within the industry. So when it started off, it was all about, I would divide it into three distinct phases. I would call it the adoption stage, or rather the habit change stage. Then I would say the mainstream platform for entertainment and that stage. And now is the monetization stage. So I would actually break it up into three. So initially, of course, the entire focus was on seeing how do we make people break that whole prime time phenomenon, which was television watching, linear TV, family viewing. I need the remote. It was a remote fight era where I want to watch my 9 o'clock versus someone else wants to watch news at 9. And that was the dilemma or the problem that was faced at that time. And then of course came OTT to say, listen, prime time is your time and your time is prime time. So which was where the habit change initiation happened. Over a period of time, people could start watching their own favorite shows on their own time on their own devices, and that's where the premise or the problem that TVs faced actually emerged on OTT. That of course went on for a couple of years, after which, of course, there were a lot of uh, new shows and new content being actually pushed onto OTT to create a little bit of more excitement, saying now that you're on the OTT, here's something exclusive that you watch here, or maybe you reverse the entire order, saying you first watch on OTT and then go on TV. So that was a gradual kind of pushing the envelope on that habit change. And then last year during the lockdown specifically, that's when actually OTT had actually come of age, and it became mainstream in every household. So everyone was starting to say, where do I get my dose of entertainment from? And there's that much you can watch on YouTube. There's that much you can watch on anything that you've already watched before on any cloud-based content. But you need a constant flurry of content coming to you in a different variety of it. And I think that's where people started realizing the value of OTT. Consumption, of course, hit through the roof in I mean, I would say there was a n-fold increase in consumption across the board. And people even started realizing the value, and maybe even early signs of paying willingness to pay actually came through last year. And we saw that quite distinctly. The whole industry saw that distinctly. MOUs shot through the roof, and that was actually proof of the pudding that people are enjoying what they're watching and they're loving it as such. Of course, cut to where we are today, and in probably in the last 1 year or so, maybe little less than a year now, if you see most of the OTTs, there are about 40 OTTs and maybe about 10 which are the front runners or probably top of pyramid, or rather the entire bulk of the business comes from 10 of them. Um, all of them, I mean, including the broadcast OTTs as well as the rest, all of them have now moved to a monetization model, which is subscription. So they started off, of course, by saying everything is free and let's do ad funded and get the eyeballs in and blah, blah, blah. But that is not a sustainable business, and AVOD will never be a sustainable business. Probably I'll tell you another reason why at another time, but subscription as a business is something that's probably here to stay, and everyone, including some of the largest OTTs with maybe even 200, 300 million subscribers or MAUs, are actually on the AVOD side, are actually pivoting and saying we need to have a subscription, premium subscription VOD business, which is where the money lies. And that's where the piece is going right now. It's very early days. It's about probably less than a year old, to be fair to the entire industry. And according to me, consolidation will happen, maybe start to happen in India, if at all, in about a couple of years, when people actually start seeing value in B2C subscription revenue coming in from OTTs, because that's where the real value is unlocked. A lot of B2B subscription revenue comes in, which is good. It's a good cash cow kind of opportunity. But B2C, where customers are willing to pay for your service, I think that's where the real unlocking of value is going to happen. And I don't see consolidation happening right now. It's a bit too early. Maybe in the next couple of years, we should start seeing a few signs of consolidation happening. But consolidation not at the OTT level, it will be more at the content level. Because when you're acquiring an OTT or even investing in one, you're investing for everything put together, the content plus the experience plus the tech plus the subscriber base. So it's not just one particular aspect that you're acquiring the entire ecosystem at large of another OTT. And I think that's where it's all going.
Nice, nice, interesting. So, I mean, that leads me to my next question, that there's all this movement and coming of age of OTT that's happened in India in the last 12 to 24 months. But if I were to, ask you that, and you said that maybe in 2 years you'll see more of the consolidation starting to happen. But in terms of looking at other metrics like profitability, like distribution, like experiences, on those particular areas over the next, say, 3 years or so, what would you say are some of the things that Indian consumers and content owners should look out for or are thinking of?
Good question, Vineet. So I believe that the OTT game is actually played based on the three C's, as I popularly uh, talk about. Um, the C's are basically content, customer acquisition, and connectivity or CDN. Now, it's between these three that everyone has to maintain a balance and maintain some sort of an equation that will finally emerge as your profitability goals. So if I look at it this way, you're talking about people having to invest in content. And once you have some great content, you also have to invest in telling customers that you have the great content, which is communicate and get those customers in. That's another deep pocketed cost. And lo and behold, when both those are actually firing on full cylinders, you get great content and you're getting customers at a breakneck speed who are consuming a lot. The ones who are actually laughing away to the bank are the CDN providers, because that's where that's absolutely based on consumption. So the more people consume, the more they love you, but at the same time, you're footing a bill going back to your CDN provider. Now these are all your main costs, I would say, apart from people and the rest. uh, Besides, and now who's going to fund all of this? Now, in two ways, it could either be the advertiser who says, okay, I'm going to take some eyeballs and I'm going to fund the eyeballs. That metrics actually doesn't make money at the end of the day. It's not a bottom line spinner. It's a mitigation of your cost in some way. But the other thing is the subscription revenue, which comes either from the businesses that you work with, or it comes directly from the consumer. And finally, that top line has to be far more than all the three costs that I mentioned, all the three C's that I mentioned. So if you look at it that way, that's probably what everyone should be really looking at. And if anyone's trying to get into the business, these are three significant investments one would really have to look at before thinking of breaking even on this business. It is a fun business. It is definitely a lot lucrative, but it is a patience game as well. You need to be at it constantly. You need to keep pumping in content. Another interesting trend that we've seen, and I think this is a fact, that content people are content loyal, they are not platform loyal. So you're as good as your last web series or your last show, and you'll obviously get your eyeballs, you'll get your subscription numbers for the great show that you've kind of launched. But if you don't sustain it with another great show, you're going to lose customers, or you probably won't get more customers on board. And therefore, it's very important to find ways for OTT players to find ways to kind of get into a habit or get customers into a habit of paying for long-term subscriptions. How do you increase LTV, the lifetime value of your customers? How do you bring them onto long-term packs? I think these are fundamental things that one needs to kind of look at and say, how do I build in uh, loyalty on the platform such that the customer is enjoying the content and he gets a periodicity of content every few days or few weeks. He's constantly getting flushed with good content. Apart from that, what I also see is that in terms of tech, there's a lot of innovation happening. I'll probably expand on that in a bit. But yeah, there's a lot of interesting innovations happening in tech. But it's also important to keep tech costs low, because there is a lot of competition in tech. And as we grow and as we kind of evolve this industry, many players coming in the market, it does become more of a buyer's market, and therefore there's lots to choose from. And therefore it just becomes that much more of a benefit for OTT players as well. Yeah, I think that's where I see things growing. Yeah.
Awesome. Awesome. No, this is some really, really great information and nuggets of knowledge that come from Zubin for the audience and any content owners who are looking at launching their own OTT platforms. This is great inspiration. So thank you for that, Zubin. And now, moving
Welcome.
on to your current role at Shemaroo and ShemarooMe, it's a brand that Indians have gotten familiar with over so many years. Starting from your book library in South Mumbai to
Mm.
the CDs and the DVD business, and then YouTube, and now OTT. You've really come full circle. So the audience would love to know more about ShemarooMe, what's coming up, what's cooking, what are the developments.
Sure. So let me tell you a little bit about Shemaroo as a company. Uh, we are, of course, our DNA is all about video content, and that's what we do best, and that's how we exist. And as you rightly said, we've been around for over almost 6 decades now. But the good thing is that every time we've stayed true to our promise. That our promise is technology being the means to the end. Our objective is to get great content with great experiences to the end customer using the technology of the phase. So to that extent, you'll understand why we started off, of course, with DVDs and VCDs and probably even VHS long ago, and put content on VHS, which was the technology and the medium of consumption to customers. Then we moved to CDs and DVDs and VCDs, that's home entertainment. And again, bringing entertainment to customers on some technology that is the latest. Then, of course, was the entire boom among the telco value added services, the VAS piece, where lots of different services could be actually rolled into the telcos, and that's how consumers could operate and consume content in a little more 2G-ish fashion, whether it was voice or ringback tones and things like that. So that was the next phase of evolution of the company. And of course, then came the early onset of digital video, which was YouTube, and our foray into YouTube started way back in 2009. Um, and we started putting up content back onto that platform. So we've stayed true to our promise of saying we provide great content in the medium and in the medium and access of how you like it, dear customer. So that's pretty much how we've kind of transitioned. And about 3 years ago, we kind of delved a lot into saying what is the role we want to play in our OTT game. So we actually thought of various things and said, okay, look, if we had to be unapologetically who we are, do we really want to play the big game, the smaller game, the valuation game, the revenue game? What we of course chose, and being very clear about our strategy, we said we want to play the revenue and profitability game very clearly. We said, how do we make money through an OTT business, or how do we make a sustainable model through the OTT business? Because as I mentioned earlier about the three C's, the costs are significant. And if you don't keep everything in check, you could end up bleeding for years on end. And we chose not to do that. We wanted to create a reasonably good, profitable business within a reasonable gestation of break even. It doesn't have to be immediate. So what we've actually done is we've actually created a, a bunch of unique propositions in the OTT space. So we chose to ourselves and said, let's look at what is happening in the Hindi space, which is of course the mainstream language, and there are dime a dozen OTTs who are doing Hindi content. And as I said, the whole funda of um, your, I mean, people are content loyal, actually holds true in the Hindi belt. So whether it's a family man on a Prime, or whether it's a scam on Sony Live, or whether it's a new movie on ShemarooMe, it does not really matter which platform you're on. You just need to keep pumping in great content and hope that your customers start seeing it, pump in more money into eyeballs, or at least uh, promoting that content so that people know it's available and they come and consume it. So What we've done is we've gone back to the platform loyalty piece, and we said, how do we make that more compelling to the customer? So in the Bollywood space, since that's of course been our core forte and we wanted to play to our strengths, we've actually broken that up into a few cohorts on the Bollywood side of things. So we've created two distinct cohorts. One is about new movies, and there answers the question of platform loyalty. So while of course we tell the customer that come for a great new movie on our platform, but it's not just once. We promise you one movie every week for a whole year, which is 52 weeks, 52 premieres. And that becomes one of our flagship products called Bollywood Premiere, uh, catering to the new movie lover. Okay. The other segment is a uniquely different but Bollywood lover, which is the classic lover. Now, that is something that is extremely underserved as a market, very high in demand. And they are looking for curation as the opportunity and a great experience, a simplified experience, less tech experience. So keep all the simplicity out and keep manage all the complexity at the back end and bring them a great experience which delivers value to that cohort. And of course, that's something we've just about begun, and we believe that's going to be a really big segment to talk about. And being Shemaroo, and of course, we associate ourselves a lot with nostalgia very proudly, because we believe that keeping that fabric of Bollywood content alive is very critical for the entire Indian population, not just in India, but even the diaspora outside India. So we've stuck to our strengths on that, and that becomes our second cohort. The third, of course, we've just begun again very recently, is we saw that there is a very unmet um, requirement or a need by one of the regional segments, which is Gujarati. And Gujarati as a consumer base has been extremely underserved on Gujarati content in general, whether it's television or movies or whatever. You don't really see too much of content having been created within the industry. And what our objective was that can we create that and see that firstly, there is definitely a space. Then we did some research to find out if there is a need. Very strong need is what was there and evinced through our research. And we created a very interesting proposition now, which is again one new piece of content every week for our Gujarati customers, whether it's a web series, whether it's a film, a blockbuster film, or it's nataks, which are plays. And Gujaratis are they really thrive on plays and nataks. So that becomes the draw, and that becomes the entire mix of the content available there. So effectively, I could actually say that we have invested a lot in one particular regional cohort, which is Gujarati. And based on the success of this, which we hopefully will see in the next 6 months to a year, we will definitely bring in many more cohorts of this nature. Yeah, I think that's where we see ShemarooMe being prevalent. We want to basically, we don't want to have the entire pie. What we want to do is have a part of the pie, but the part of the pie we have should be the tastiest for our customers.
Awesome. That's great. I mean, I couldn't agree with you more when you spoke about the focus on content as well as keeping it simple for the audience. But that leads me to the next question, where clearly content is king. The tech piece is an enabler, but being part of the tech industry myself for a few years now, we are seeing the video tech space exploding in terms of competition. There's so many partners now pitching OTT solutions versus say 4 or 5 years ago. What are the big things from your point of view to consider when OTT platforms and video businesses are choosing their partners and tech vendors of choice?
Oh, great question, yeah. As I always said, technology is the means to the end, but that means has to be really meaningful for your end goal of running a sustainable business to actually be fruitful. Um, on tech, Vineet, what I believe is yes, there are lots of partners available right now. If you just raise your hand for a mini RFP, you can be rest assured you'll get at least about 20 hands up saying I want to pitch, and everyone's hungry to get a part of that pie. Uh, from a tech stack point of view, the way I look at it is, of course, you need to have some really good. The front end has to be absolutely impeccable, because if your experience is something that your customer does not fall in love with you for, then you probably will have a question mark on the platform loyalty piece that we were talking of. You can make it as lucrative on the pricing side, but if your experience is not compelling enough, he might just unsubscribe and never come back to you. So UI UX is something that is very critical. Your front ends across various platforms, whether it's mobile and whether it's TV, you really need to work on that and make sure that the experience is seamless. Whatever you're showing off, if you're showing anything related to a regional piece of entertainment content, that's one way of OTT. If you're showing something more music oriented, you need to figure out another way of UI and UX. So it all depends on what your offering is, but the experience has to be commensurate with that offering. So that's on the front end side. On the back end side, of course, there are lots of technologies in terms of you need to make sure your player is intact, your back end CMS, your back end rules, business rules, the entire piece around transcoding, making sure your content is uploaded at the right time, and of course, delivery. That's the most important piece, which is how fast your content is getting loaded, how fast your customers get to see the content when they click the thumbnail, which is, of course, a function of how well your CDN has been architectured. So it's an end to end piece in terms of technology of delivery of the content. The other piece, which is very, very critical, is once you've given the customer the product, uh, you've got your entire the entire player piece in place, the CMS in place. There are two very important components, which is your payment stack. I think that's the make or break of a subscription business. You need to have a very tight control on how your payment stack operates technically, integration wise, as well as whether you have all the bells and whistles to manage all your drop offs. Because a lot of customers come to the platform, they will come to the payment page, they will evince interest in buying something. You need to monitor those drop offs and then go back and somehow reach out to them through growth marketing or through any other means by actually saying you are interested in what actually stopped you, or would you like to kind of convert and can we help you, or aided conversions is something that you'll really have to work on. So your payment stack has to be impeccable and has to be perfect. On the other hand, after all of this is experience, which is front end. I do believe that the next wave, or the real juice out of your OTT business will come out of analytics and is insights, more importantly. So just knowing that you have X million MAUs is not going to help you take any decisions. But if you tell me, or if one of my team comes and tells me that, Zubin, there are a certain kind of Gujarati audience who ends up watching, if a Gujarati audience ends up watching more than 37 minutes of a play, they are likely to consume a rom-com movie for sure. And therefore, whenever you are launching a rom-com movie, please promote it to this cohort of users. Now, that is directly related to business. And I see that business intelligence, not just through systems, but even through people who can read data and bring out all those systems, I mean, all that intelligence, is probably the biggest backbone of the OTT success story, especially in subscription businesses. So, if I think within that stack, if I had to sum up, I'd say it's, of course, your front end, your back end in terms of delivery. It's about payment stack being impeccable and making it very smooth and simplified. And most importantly, a BI layer that actually has both people as well as AI ML to throw up insights that are meaningful enough to drive more business.
Awesome. Awesome. This has been a fantastic podcast and some really great knowledge out of experience that comes from Zubin. That's really, really appreciated, Zubin. And, lastly, you know, uh, we would also like, as Press Play, to unmask the individual behind the knowledge from a professional point of view to a personal point of view. So it would be great. Zubin, we see your posts on LinkedIn. We know you're an avid yogi, and sharing the parallels between yoga and the business management world, and that's some really great info that people can learn from. So the audience would also love to hear about Zubin's interests and hobbies and passions beyond video.
Sure, I can. um, so yeah, I mean, I have a very stark belief, and it's like it's very strong within my DNA that I don't believe that you only live to work. You have to work. It becomes part of your overall reason to be. So therefore, I believe that everyone should have a side which is about pursuing passions, and I am a big believer of doing that. So whether I mean I have always taken up different kind of passions that actually come to me, and I really like to kind of fuel them with whatever I'm doing. So, for example, I've been an avid voiceover artist for almost 5 years now, and I've done tons of work on voiceovers. I've done about almost 1,500 jobs in the last 5 years. Again, they come very much on autopilot. I don't push the envelope there because of work pressures, but yeah, I ensure that I make the time to deliver, and it's absolutely professional work. I've delivered stuff for over about 300 brands and continue to do that on a regular basis. At least about 2 jobs a week is what I work on. Apart from that, I also, I pursue art in some way. So I of course paint a bit, but that is something that has to be when there's a certain calling. So there's something what I call the soul calling. I can never plan a weekend saying this week I'm going to paint something. No, it just doesn't happen that way. In fact, when that feeling of picking up the brushes and rolling on canvas comes along, it's like such a gush of energy that I could probably be starting off 1 day before a board meeting, and it could suddenly trigger at about 8 in the evening. I'll pick out my canvas and brushes by about 10 post dinner, and I'll finish that whole piece by about 3 in the morning, and finally get to the board meeting in the morning. So I think that's more like the it's a specific thing only for the art piece of work that comes to me, and I'll do it. I mean, I'm not someone who'll postpone it or something. I'll actually go ahead and do it. That apart, yeah, on the fitness side, yeah, I mean, I also have a story where in my childhood I used to be 110 kilos, and I was absolutely obese and I mean, I gluttony was my best friend. Uh, Cut to when I suddenly discovered that no, I had to kind of get into shape and get into form. So I shed a lot of weight using yoga and swimming as my two big levers to kind of get into shape and fitness. And yeah, over the years, both swimming and yoga have helped me a lot in terms of just maintaining great amount of discipline, self-discipline, making sure diets are in place, making sure your fitness levels are in place. And I always believe that if you're fit and if you have a good morning regime, your day is always going to be much more fruitful than if you don't. So it's very important to have that in place, and it could be anything. It could just be anything. It doesn't have to be yoga. It could just be something that you connect with, and it's again that soul calling. When you finally do that fitness 1 hour, it's supposed to be, and I call it. I mean, I tell a lot of friends that that's the most important meeting of the day with the most important person of your life, which is yourself. And you got to respect that. So many people don't respect it and then say nahi yaar, I have to go back to work, or I have an important meeting. So they overlook their own importance and meeting themselves in this form. Um, and that's very important to me. And probably that's why I'm so active on making sure that fitness plays a very significant role in my life. Yeah, that apart, yeah, I think that's a little bit about myself beyond work. Uh, Bottom line, I can only say, Vineet, is that in the end, it's about things that what you should actually strive for are things that defy the law of diminishing marginal utility. In fact, it's like the more you do something, the less and less you like it. In fact, here it should be the opposite, which is the more you do something, the more and more you want to do more of it. And I think if you find those little nuggets of your life, there'll be a lot to cherish life and enjoy life and be grateful for it.
Awesome, man. That was really, really good. A lot of inspiration out there for myself, but also the audience who's listening. And it's been a tough time over the last 12 plus months with the pandemic. So these nuggets of information, if put to use, I think will benefit all of us, and we all need to take care of this. But this has been an amazing session. Thank you, Zubin, for your time. Really appreciate it, and looking forward to catching up soon.
Thank you so much, Vineet, for having me over on Pressplay. It's been an absolute pleasure to share my thoughts and my views so openly on this forum. And it's always great to catch up with you, Vineet. You're an amazing human being, and I wish you all the best.
Thank you, Zubin. Cheers.